welcome to episode 36 of the Tomato Timer. And this is another episode in the Young Changemaker series, and we have an awesome young changemaker. Spandana is the founder of ZoEasy, a platform to educate and match migrant workers with the right opportunities. And as one of our community members says, is there anything this power lady has not done? And it's incredible. When you start reading her bio, I can go through it, but like reading out the main points, she's been featured on the World Economic Forum, the Financial Times. She recently won Forbes 30 Under 30 award. She was part of the Dubai World Expo. She is the winner of the Lead 2030 award. She has huge amounts of awards, recognitions across the world, and she's a business graduate. So without talking too much about just your bio, tell us a little bit about yourself, Spandana. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on the show today. Thank you. Me as a person, honestly, just a regular 25-year-old, I guess. So I was born in India, brought up in the UAE, moved to the UK to study business for 3 years, and then moved back to not immediately start ZoEasy, but then kind of got on that path, and 5 years later, still continuing going ahead with ZoEasy, strong as ever. So I don't know where to begin. ZoEasy was an interesting story. Do you want to hear about that?
Yeah, let's get started, because it's a difficult one. It's not a problem or concern that many of us think about. So how did that idea even come to you?
So like I said, I've grown up in the UAE most of my life. So I moved here when I was around 7, 8 years old. And as a child, I've always kind of had this fascination of interacting with people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, just talking to people, getting to know what their stories are. And it's been a habit of mine since I was a kid. So, I'm in a bathroom or I'm at a restaurant. Yeah, I just talk to the waiter. I'm like, "Hi, how are you? How's your day going? How did you come here? Tell me your story." So that's how it kind of started. And every time I would get to know them. Many people actually are either software engineers or they're teachers in their previous countries, or they have a certain skill set, but it's not in line with the kind of job that they're doing abroad. So that kind of piqued my interest a little. It was a bit of a question mark, like, why are you doing this when you actually have a degree or you're skilled in another area? And so what I came to realize is that many people share a similar story where they rely on middlemen back home or brokers back home to be able to find employment abroad, to be able to, provide better for their families. But unfortunately, what happens is, they go through about 4 to 6 layers of middlemen. So it's not just one middleman you're talking to. The employer and job seeker end up going through about 6 layers of middlemen. And in the process, by the time the message reaches the job seeker, it's not the same anymore. So, they're sold a dream, which is very, very different to reality. And so that's why, because of a lack of guidance and information, and because they're usually in a situation of financial desperation, sometimes they become exposed to fraud and exploitation by said middlemen. And so in the process, some people have even paid up to $3,000 in advance for a job they're not really aware of or really prepared for. And so that was kind of where the problem stems from. I realized it was quite a repetitive thing I kept hearing. And so that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to start ZoEasy. But I'll be honest, like, ZoEasy wasn't actually the main career path I had considered first.
Really?
So it was a bit of a crossroads.
Take us back to school, and was it even business you were planning to study at uni?
So actually, my passion since I was a child laid in 3 main areas. So I was very passionate about education, very passionate about employment, and very passionate about healthcare. So these were actually the 3 areas that I looked at. And actually, my original thought process was to become a neurologist. It fascinated me as a subject. And so I thought of medicine as a career option for a long time. But as we got closer to IB1, IB2 times, I came to realize that, my strength lay more on the business front as opposed to the sciences. And I mean, natural to say, the doctor path is like the usual, the good path that, you would kind of pursue within the family, especially like an traditional South Indian family, doctors, engineers, lawyers, or accountants at best. But those are the traditional paths you would consider. But I felt like, it wasn't for me anymore. It just wasn't an area that piqued my interest as such. And my idea at the end of the day is to create an impact in the community, either in education, employment, or healthcare. So you don't necessarily need to be a doctor to be able to make an impact in healthcare. You could have what you need are the necessary skills to be able to build something from scratch, operationalize it, and then scale it. So for that, a business degree just made more sense to me. So I ended up pursuing business instead. And I was actually the first person to pursue business in my family on my mom's side. My dad's side is a little more experienced with it. So like my dad, the family on that end mostly come from a business/economics background. But on my mom's side, I was the first one to kind of just say, nope, not going down this path.
So,
Gonna do
I was just gonna ask you, was this a very popular decision in your family? It doesn't sound like it was.
it. So actually, they were very supportive. Like they were
That's really
they
good.
were surprisingly okay with it. So what I did was like I made this whole decision matrix and sat them down in the living room like, so these are the pros and cons, this is why I think this is a better opportunity for me. And they understood. They said, look, whatever you want to do, just make sure you're the best at it. So as long as you don't have any regrets and you think this is a fruitful path down the line, go and pursue what you want to pursue. Don't do something that you don't like. And so that's how I kind of got into business instead of medicine. And then 3 years later, my idea, or my plan at least, was to kind of pursue a career with the Big Four.
Yeah.
And I was actually offered a job at a Big Four for tax and consulting in the UK. But it was exciting. I was just happy that I was able to get through all those rounds. I mean, there were like 5 rounds. It was insane. And you're competing against some of the best graduates from the best schools, and so my university is good, but I wouldn't say like, it's not an Oxford or a Cambridge, but it's a good school. And so to be able to get through those 5 rounds it felt great. But it had reached a point where while I was going through these rounds, I had this idea at the back of my head as well. And so I spoke to my dad about it, who's also an entrepreneur. And he said, why don't you lay out a budget, a financial model, see if it's viable, start speaking to some people. And if it's something that interests you, or, you think it's something you can pursue, then give it a go. So I was doing that concurrently. And the day I got my offer, actually, was the day I also received an interest in investment. So I decided to pursue ZoEasy instead of.
I want to interrupt you a little bit in your story to ask you kind of to delve a little bit more about your kind of decision in the university times, especially because many of our viewers, including myself, I faced this challenge of trying to explain to my parents about why I wanted to go out to study a natural science, a mathematics, without any like connection to what the real world or what the economics of it would mean. And it was tough. It was tough for my parents to even support me, because there's an extended family who was like, so what is Zubair going to do? Is he going to become a doctor or an engineer? Let's talk about that a little bit, because it's something we hear so often. And unfortunately, many of our listeners maybe today, and a lot of the ZNotes community, face this challenge where their parents think that they know better for them. And like, I want to really clarify that parents do have some incredible wisdom, and we're so indebted to them for so much they give us. But how can we maybe like explain ourselves a bit better, or pursue the path that we want to, aligning with our parents? What's the kind of thought process there?
So honestly, I'm very lucky to have very supportive parents. I'll be like, sometimes I know not everyone has that or gets that. Sometimes their parents love them like anything, but it so happens to be you have these traditional career paths that you want to pursue, and usually sometimes that comes across as the safer option. It's risk-free. You don't, you know that there's a clear career path ahead for you. In my case, like I said, I wanted to be a doctor for a long time. And my grandparents especially, were over the moon. Like, my grandma always wanted a doctor in the family,
Yeah.
But as I came to realize that, one, it's not an area of strength. Two, it's not an area of passion. I was very passionate about biology, don't get me wrong, but chemistry and physics were just like a big no-no for me. I couldn't handle that. Especially like higher level IB chemistry, just no, I couldn't handle it. So it's about communicating where your strengths lie with your parents at the end of the day. If you see that your strength lies in a specific area and your vision lies in a specific area, even if you try to pursue another career path, you're not going to be happy at the end of it. And you don't even know if you're going to be able to perform to your best level if it's a subject that doesn't really resonate with you. And that's what I communicated to my parents. Like I said, I drew out an entire decision matrix. My dad was very happy because my grandfather used to do things like this. So he was like, this is excellent. Great. Okay, take us through your pros and cons. And like, I explained the entire situation to them. I told them that, the likelihood of me doing better in business is much higher as opposed to, getting a medical, like going into medicine, because at the end of the day, this is my goal. This is what I want to pursue. And there are enough career prospects out there for a business graduate as well. It's not like, it's a dead end once you take business.
Yeah.
And depending on the course that you do and the kind of credits that you can get with that as well, your opportunities get higher. At the end of the day, it depends on you as a person. You will make the difference. It's not your degree. It is you. And what you can put out there is putting your best foot forward. So if you can convince your parents of that, then I think they'll come on board. It'll be difficult, but they'll come on board. They're understanding. They love you at the end of the day. So
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's you who makes a difference, not your degree, and it's so true. I've seen it so often. Just getting out of uni and seeing the different paths my friends have taken, and it's some of them are so related to their degree, some of them are just so different, and they're all making a difference. And it's almost like a degree is almost like, nowadays at least, it's almost like a toolkit. You're learning a set of skills, you're learning a certain frame of thought process. You're learning all these kind of ways to approach a problem, and
right.
and it's like you do what you want to do with this kind of set of skills, and you're contextualizing it with different names. You can call it business, you can call it a degree in chemistry, you can call it a degree in whatever, and you're still learning the same core skill sets, and what you do it with it is what makes a difference. So maybe that's the next question for you. What made it like, even within business, there's so many incredible opportunities out there. You can easily have made a kind of a startup-y kind of $1 million business where you're thinking about growth metrics and numbers and hitting those revenue targets. What made you think about social impact? Where did that stem from?
So, like I said, I've always wanted to do something that contributes to society in some way, gives back into society in some way, and I'm a person that likes to interact with people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So it was kind of identifying that problem and seeing the kind of struggle that people go through. Why not try to come up with a solution that can impact the community, but it can also help you generate revenue. So you're essentially creating a social enterprise where you can generate returns sustainably. And honestly, yes, 5 years ago, maybe startups were they are still very like growth driven, revenue driven. It's about the scalability, replicating those business models in different parts of the world. But, there is a lot more awareness in the community now as well. People are starting to bring in those CSR elements. People are starting to look at how we can also end up creating an impact in the community versus just generating a profit, and the mindset of people has changed quite significantly. Even like even when you speak to investors, for example, there are investors out there who will focus on the social impact metrics as well. I mean, Lead 2030 is a clear example of that, right? They have created a fund to accelerate people who are contributing to the SDGs. 5 years ago, you wouldn't necessarily or traditionally have come across a fund like that unless it was started by the CSR program of a company. So for me, I always believe that, you know, you need to create an impact in some way as opposed to just focusing on revenue targets. Revenue is important though, don't get me wrong. Like you have to survive as a company at the end of the day. The only way you'll keep going is if you generate revenues. Just make sure that you generate those revenues sustainably.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Talking about Lead 2030, that's part of the reason why you're here today is because you're One Young World ambassador, and that's how we got connected. Although we never met in an actual summit, you know, you weren't part of the London one, and that was my first one. So, how has that helped you kind of become a kind of a young change maker? I'm sure that you're the winner of Lead 2030, so that must have supported you in your mission quite a lot as well.
No, definitely. And I was actually at the London one. I guess we just never bumped into each
Oh,
other over
sorry.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
was
a
at the
huge thing.
2018 and the 2019 one. So um,
Okay.
I think honestly, One Young World made a huge difference. Really, like it put you out. My first One Young World conference that I went to was actually in 2018. It was in The Hague. And I
Mm-hmm.
went as a Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs scholar, so the Enterprise for Peace ambassadors.
Yeah.
And I also was given the chance to speak. And that actually made a huge difference because you're able to put your idea and the impact that you're trying to create on a global platform where
Mm.
people from across the world then start reaching out to you to kind of
Yeah.
see how we can work together and help drive this forward. And then in addition, and because that happened, that started opening up doors in different areas. And we were able to kind of establish the right associations and the right partnerships to be able to scale up our impact. And then, you know, One Young World themselves have a ton of opportunities for their ambassadors, right? And one such opportunity was the Lead 2030 program. And, you know, I mean, I never expected that I would win Lead 2030. Like, I just thought that let me put in an application for quality education, and because Deloitte and Credit Suisse are both amazing partners to have. And so that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to kind of connect with them, because of the mentorship they'd be able to provide. And that's exactly what happened when we won Credit Suisse's Quality Education Challenge, because it's not just about the funding that you get to accelerate your business, but it's also the kind of the support system that you get from Credit Suisse as a whole. And it wasn't just one specific department of Credit Suisse that was speaking to me. You know, I was being connected to people across the globe. So it was people in Switzerland, it was people in the UAE, the Middle East, it was people in the UK, and they all focus in different departments depending on the areas that you're struggling with. Like, for example, technology was a big challenge for me. I really had no idea how to go about the tech side of things because I'm not a tech person. I don't come from that background, you know. And I mentioned this to my coordinators and mentors at Credit Suisse, and they immediately connected me to their tech head. I mean, without that connection, you would never be able to reach out to the technology head of Credit
Of a
Suisse.
multinational organization. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And the advice that he had given was unbelievable. Like the kind of exposure and mentorship you get through that program in itself opens up a lot of doors for you.
Talking about opening up doors, obviously you're like a stellar example, right? You as again kind of repeating my community's messages, you know, they're like super impressed by all your achievements and awards. But like when you explain your story, you've shown it off almost as something that any of us could do. But there's obviously this kind of spirit and there's drive that you have. The way you go out to speak to people, the way you kind of knock on other people's doors. And yes, One Young World puts you in front of a lot of people, but then you're the one who's actually speaking, right? You're the one who's going and then saying to some multinational corporation that I want to speak to your head of department. How the hell do you get that confidence? How do you move in and speak with that kind of passion and without the kind of the embarrassment of, oh, what are they going to think? It's the head of technology. It's of the biggest organization, one of the biggest organizations. How am I going to be presenting myself?
Honestly, just think of it this way. What's the worst that can happen? They'll say no. That's it. But you haven't lost anything in the process. You know, there's a saying in Telugu, in my language, where if you throw a rope to a mountain, if you pull, either you get the mountain or you end up losing the rope. That's it. So if you pull, you either get the mountain.
Yeah.
If you lose out, if you lose the rope, all you've lost is a rope. That's it. So don't, just don't think of those inhibitions. What's the worst that can happen? They say, I don't have time for you. Okay, no problem. Keep their contact details. Keep them posted on how things are going. Keep sending those emails, and then they themselves will say, okay, this is interesting. You've grown quite a bit since the last time I spoke to you. Why don't we have a chat now? So it's all about essentially networking with people at the right time, and just don't be afraid to hear a no. Honestly, from 2017 to probably the end of 2018, I just heard no's consistently. But it didn't faze me. Like there were points where I'm like, okay, am I doing this right? Am I heading in the right direction? What's going on? But then one yes, like One Young World's one yes, changed the entire ball game. So it's all about finding it's all about finding that one door that can open up multiple doors for you. Forbes and One Young World were two entities that were able to do that.
Wow. I just literally scrolling through LinkedIn today, I saw a post which said, I love no's because after 99 no's, you get a yes. And it's obviously like that's a very, a fictional kind of way of framing it, but it makes a lot of sense because every time you get a no, it's just kind of redirecting you, saying, okay, that door isn't actually meant for you, you need to be going that way. So universe kind of directing you in the right direction.
What's the worst that can happen? That's just think of it that way.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things is that what you're talking about is something so much bigger than you. It's not about you getting a new job or you finding yourself trying to find a car or something like that. It's about you trying to help other people. And that's an incredible power that, it just comes from within you.
Definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about, before we kind of wrap this all up, about all the other interests that you have. So how does that kind of build into your life? Were there, so you I think a world challenger, and you went to Tanzania to build and help teach there. You pursue a lot of sports. You're a marathon runner. Yay. You're a swimmer. You're a singer. All these things, how do they contribute to you as a human being?
So honestly, those were all inculcated when I was in high school. So World Challenge, for example, I went when I was 16. I think
Oh,
I
wow.
was like 16 years old when I went on World Challenge, but that trip completely changed my life. Like the new perspectives that you come back with. It was, I mean, it was essentially 3 weeks of sleeping in a tent, and then having to manage yourself over there. So you're having to budget yourself, you're having to cook for yourself, you're having to organize the entire trip on the ground over there. And we went to a school to help rebuild part of it and teach, and then we went climbing up Mount Meru, which was incredible. Like the overall thing was, the entire experience was just absolutely amazing. And that was like my first real life, I did travel alone by myself before, but that was the first time that I was away from like parental support.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Leaving the
So you have
nest.
to do everything by yourself. You're not allowed to, yeah, exactly. You're not allowed to speak to them. They're not allowed to call you. You just
Wow.
have to go about your life for the
Sorry, it seems my connection is not letting me hear you very well. Let me just make sure if it's my end or not. It seems okay just on my end, so we'll just wait for Spandana to like reconnect, I guess. Hey, yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Sorry, some sort of connection issue.
Okay, let's see if this works now.
It does. Looks really good. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Right. So let me just put you back where you were like kind of last what we heard. It was the first time out of the nest, and you were experiencing stuff for the first time in your life, and you weren't connected to your parents at all.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. Like it was the first time away, first time having to manage things on your own and just kind of go about life independently, I suppose. But honestly, at this point though, like this point of time, the company has become everything. And that's not necessarily healthy. So definitely promoting work-life balance. That's really important because if you don't have time for yourself, sometimes it just, your mind gets completely exhausted. So you do need to just take that time off for yourself and just make sure that you're in a good space, that you're still connected to your friends in different parts of the world, and just keep at it. So make sure you have a good work-life balance.
So talking about advice, to wrap this up, I'd love to hear what you think about like what some of our kind of young students should be thinking about when they are not just pursuing the university degree, but even before that. So you were doing this at 16, you were opening your perspective up and looking at the different opportunities that the world provided for you at such a young age. What could we be thinking about and looking at? And considering we're in a pretty tough time in terms of the pandemic and having stuff not as easily accessible as they used to be.
Right.
What's open there for us?
I would definitely say create a constant culture of learning about you. And what I mean by learning is not like the traditional studying side of things, but, for example, like when the pandemic had started initially, edX was offering these amazing courses in relation to different areas, right? And these are some skills that I myself have never picked up. And so, give things like that a whirl. Try to expand your horizons, look at different skills that you can explore. Reading is like the best thing that can happen to you. So keep reading and keep reading about different things. It's not just like specific areas or specific areas of focus that you need to focus on, but it's about kind of looking at books in relation to, I don't know, say a healthy mindset and a healthy living as well. Things like that can just open up your perspective in general and that can give you a good work-life balance. Try to meet more people. If you can't meet more people, connect online, get on these webinars, try to network even if it's online, because your network is everything at the end of the day. Even at a young age, if you start that and you start to build that network, then you're going to have a good support system with you in the future, because that's everything, honestly. So far, like all this progress that has happened is because of the connections that we've established. Without that, you can't really progress and you can't really scale. So that's another main thing I would say. Keep interacting, even if you're an introvert. I completely get that. Like I need my downtime and I need my space, but it's always good to kind of go and just meet with people and energize a little bit, just so that you can continue to build your network and build meaningful relationships.
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you so much, Spandana. It was amazing having you and hearing your incredible story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And sorry about that. I wasn't sure like where the connection was disrupted. So
it's all good. We're good. Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners who are live. Again, you can always join us on Discord to check out our next guest, their bio, ask them your questions. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with ZNotes, so check us out on our website as well. So until next week, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.